Hi, my name is Mashanta and welcome to my YouTube channel. I love all things beauty and this is where I talk about skincare, self-love and makeup. So if that's the sort of thing that you like, then please keep on watching. I am so excited about today's video where I am going to be ranking all my Huda Beauty palettes that I own. And I have 12 Huda Beauty palettes. I have 9 of these 9 pan palettes and 3 of the 15 or 18 shade palettes. Huda Beauty is one of my favorite brands, so it's very difficult to choose amongst products that you really enjoy and that hold a special place in your heart. This is the Huda Beauty Ruby Obsessions palette. And I really enjoyed the color story of the Ruby Obsessions palette. It did swatch more pink rather than red. Therefore, I didn't really enjoy it as much as I expected to. The second reason I didn't enjoy this palette as much was all the looks that I came up with looked largely similar. So therefore, even though the quality of this palette was fairly good, I found it was not very versatile, which is why I have ranked it where it is. But nothing against this palette. I do love this palette. Mauve Obsessions palette. This is my first Huda Beauty palette and this is quite beat up. Works well for a pretty muted work look, but the swatches and the quality is quite nice. Like it's still buttery soft. It's ranking where it's ranking because at least my ability to come up with different versatile looks with this is limited, and there are some shades which I feel will not work for me at all. Like this one, I can't think of ever being able to use this shade. In number 10, I have the Mint Pastels palette. And this is how it looks. This is a beautiful color story, but because of the color of the palette and the color story, I was just very scared that it might not work on me. From a quality standpoint, it's pretty good. The shimmers have depth. Some of these are more muted and the pastels are pigmented but still sometimes do come out as chalky. So this is, to be honest, it's a very difficult color story to formulate as well. This is the reason I'm ranking this where it is. It's more to do with me, nothing to do with the palette. I think I'm just too scared of using this on the daily or using this even outside. I've never worn this palette outside. Sapphire Obsessions palette. I love the color story. I think it's very versatile. You have different kinds of blues. You have a deeper blue, you have a mid-tone blue, you have a more mint green, sea green blue. You've got a silver work as an inner icon, a highlight. The only problem that I have with this palette is this shade, this lime green shade. It's not pigmented, very chalky. Also, the shimmers don't perform as well as you would expect from Huda. Yeah, especially this one, you see, is quite lackluster and chalky. I don't know if it's because of the age of the palette, but I love this color story. I think this is a beautiful color story. I just wish I had used it a lot more earlier. This is the Topaz Obsessions. I think this is the first Gemstone Obsessions palette that I bought. And this has to be one of the more variable ones, at least for my skin tone. As a color story, it really appealed to me. I felt the quality was also quite nice. The shimmers might be a little crumbly now, but it was fairly pigmented and it's still buttery soft. See, the shimmer just swatches quite beautifully. But then, the mattes don't work very well. Like if you see closely, you can see it is tending towards being chalky. This one is a lot better. This one is okay. Now the reason this is ranking where it is, I just felt that the looks looked very similar. Like especially when I tried this shade and this shade, it looked very similar. This shimmer looks very similar. So just the overall, as a palette, when I think of the number of looks I can create with this, it's a lot lesser. The Toffee Brown Obsessions palette. I really liked this brown yellow color story. I really enjoy the mattes in this palette. I think they're pretty well formulated, very pigmented. They swatch pretty decently. It again could be just because of the age of the palette. The shimmers are quite nice. My only challenge with this palette is, again, this seems like a one-trick pony. I feel a lot of the looks that I come up with this will look very similar. Like even though there are differences in the shimmer shades, when I put it on my eyelid, it just looks gold. This is again one of the new ones. This is the Khaki Haze Obsessions palette. This is how it looks. I love this for the olive green tones here. These are shades that I haven't really seen in other brands, other palettes. A lot of this is also a function of the age of the palette when I'm ranking this, how I feel about the palette, how I felt when I bought it. Next one that I have, the Amethyst Obsessions palette. This is a beautiful palette. It looks barely used because again I was scared of the color story. For the longest time I thought brown girls couldn't do color on their eyes, and look at me now, like I've just got the craziest color. This is the kind of palette that I used to look at, I used to admire, but never used. Now I've slowly started using it and I really love it. I always get compliments when I use this. I also love the berry tones here. I think there are different kinds of berry tones, so it gives you a lot of versatility. The only challenge that I find is, this color, this shade and this shade are too similar. Like this is more pink, this is more berry, but they're too similar on the eye. Like when I use it, it looks the same. The overall look that it gives your eye, it's like a really nice, oh, this is such a beautiful shimmer. And this is also a lovely, like I love the shift in that color. Oh, this is such a lovely color. Did you see that? Did you see that shift? And look at it, this is a single palette and you can definitely create multiple different looks from this palette, and that's why this is ranking where it is. My next palette is the Emerald Obsessions palette. This palette just ticks a lot of boxes. I love the quality in this palette, the color story in this palette. You can see I'm a sucker for the khaki green or the olive green which is here, and I just love the versatility of this palette, that I love it despite the incredible fallout, which is very, very annoying. As you can see, this is quite a well-rounded palette with both mattes and shimmers, and the quality is just top-notch, which is why I love this palette. You can create many beautiful looks with this. I can think of at least 6-7 looks with this. Now, the reason the large palettes are ranked higher than the smaller ones is A, I do find the quality of the larger ones better, and B, just from a value per shade perspective, the quantity of product that you get, the number of shades that you get, it's a lot more cost effective for the larger palettes versus the smaller palettes. And therefore I always take the larger palettes whenever I'm traveling, because I don't want to be restricted by a single color story, which invariably I am with the smaller palettes. Rose Gold Remastered palette. I remember lusting for this palette for the longest time when Huda was not even had not even launched in India. I love the mattes in this palette and the color story in this palette. It is just gorgeous. Like, look at the color story. You've got a lot of neutrals, you've got a lot of shimmers, you've got pinks, reds. It's just very, very nice. The shimmers are very, very different in texture. Powdery, some of them are cream shimmers. Like, I love the different textures in this. I also loved the black here, but I kind of messed it up. I'm just ranking it where it's ranking for A. I got it at a crazy discount. I think Huda is discontinuing this range if it hasn't already been discontinued. The range of shades that you get, and also for sentimental reasons, because this was one of the first palettes. This was the first palette. It was either this or the Desert Dusk palette that I think she came up with. It was in my mental wish list for at least 4-5 years. Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. This has to be one of the best palettes that she's come up with, both from a quality standpoint, from a color story standpoint. This is just phenomenal. By the way, today I have the shade Mercury on my eyes, and it's just that I just have the shade Mercury on my eyes and the shade Nebula as the inner corner highlight, and it's amazing. And I love the fact that there's so many different textures. Like, look at it. At least 10 looks, and I did get this at a discount. It's so easy to make it work. I love that it is so versatile. Now finally, number one, and I thought long and hard about this, and this is the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude palette. Everything about this palette is absolutely brilliant. I have a dedicated video which talks about this palette and all the swatches, and I've created 7 looks with this palette. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think you can very easily create 10, 12, 15 looks from this palette. Just from a quality standpoint, it's absolutely brilliant. I think let me just show you some of the shades that I really love. This is the shade Desire. I love that they are duochromes. Like, the shimmers do it for me in this palette. I love the shimmers more than the mattes. Not to say that the mattes are bad. It's just that the shimmers are so brilliant that they sometimes overshadow the mattes. If your skin tone is similar to mine, I think you will find lots of different ways to play with this palette. I can use this on the daily, I can use this for special occasions. I have taken just this palette for a 10-day trip and it has worked perfectly. So I just really, really love this palette. And so that is all my rankings. I had 12 eyeshadow palettes that I ranked. 9 of them are the smaller 9-pan palettes. A lot of them are limited edition or discontinued, and I'm sorry about that, but I did want to compare the formula and see how it stacked up. There were 3 larger palettes, you know, the 18 shade palettes. And I really hope you found this video helpful. If any of the palettes caught your eye and you want me to create a more dedicated look or a more in-depth review of this, then please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much if you watched till the very end. I hope you have a brilliant rest of the day or a great night's rest whenever you're watching this. Thank you so much. Bye.